Hey guys, Adam here. I'm going to do a quick deck tech for this new uh, Shadow of Mortality sacrifice deck. Uh, Basically looking to uh, cast Torment of Hailfire from anywhere from X equals 13 to X equals 40. Super fun deck to play, insanely fast. I think this is by far the fastest deck I've ever played in Timeless. Lots of turn 2 wins. If you're not winning turn 2, you're usually winning turn 3. Uh, and yeah, just really crazy. There's nothing like this deck in the format. So um, yeah, so let's start with the combo itself. So basically, we're trying to use Necropotence or Necrodominance or Grizzlebrand in some situations to get our life low enough for Shadow of Mortality to only cost 2. We're going to put it on the battlefield. We're going to then sacrifice it. That's going to give us 15 mana, and then we're either going to just straight up cast Torment of Hailfire for X equals 13, which is almost always enough to win. But if we don't have Torment, or if it's not enough to win, then we're going to peer into the Abyss ourselves, draw like another 20 cards, uh, basically repeat this process again. We got some tutors in here if we're missing pieces, and then yeah, eventually cast Torment for some insane number and win the game on the spot. So the engine of this deck is going to be Necropotence, Necrodominance, and Show and Tell. Necropotence is what you is like by far the best. Turn 1 Necropotence is the ideal hand. And you have multiple ways of getting turn 1 Necropotence or Necrodominance. You can just use Dark Ritual to do it, or you can evoke Grief, sacrifice Grief, and then play it. So yes, like I said, your ideal is turn 1 Necropotence. Turn 1 Necrodominance is good as well. And the last option is turn 2 Show and Tell. For Show and Tell, the way that this deck is going to utilize it is you're going to be Show and Telling Grizzlebrand into play. So you put it in, and you want to do this turn 2 specifically off of a Dark Ritual because you need the floating mana. You could also do it off of the Grief Sacrifice line, just like the other way with the Necros. But you need that floating mana because you're going to put Grizzlebrand in, you're going to activate it twice, and then you're going to sacrifice it, give yourself 8 mana, and so you'll have drawn 14 cards, gotten 8 mana, and then you can do something like Dark Ritual into Peer yourself to then find Shadow and another sacrifice and have enough mana to play them. Or if you just find a Shadow and a sacrifice off of the 14 cards from Grizzlebrand, then you can just generate 15 mana right then, and it's the exact same lines. It's just that that you use Show and Tell and Grizzlebrand to get there, and then sacrifice the Grizzlebrand. So it's the exact same thing. There's also a lot rarer Show and Tell line where you're going to Show and Tell in a Shadow, but you can only do this. You still need that floating mana, so it still has to be off of like a Dark Ritual on turn 2, or like if you're just going to hardcast it on turn 4. You're going to Show and Tell in a Shadow, sacrifice the Shadow, but in order for this to work, you need to have either a Peer into the Abyss in your hand or a Torment in your hand. And so this way, you'll have the exact same result. This could also work with the tutors, where you would tutor for peer yourself, draw 20 cards, and you'll draw into the stuff that you need to win the game. It's a little risky though, because your life isn't going to be low enough to like loop shadows for quite as much mana, because they're not going to cost 2 this way. After you peer yourself, they're going to cost 10. Not 10, sorry. You'll have 10 life, so they will cost 5. So just something to keep in mind with that line. But this is like a very specific line. You have to have a very specific hand. Not something that will come up super often, but good to know that you can do it. So yeah, let's talk more about just like the how the deck functions as a whole. So when you're mulliganing with this deck, mulliganing is like the most important part of this deck. You basically always need to either have the turn 1 Necropotence, the turn 1 Necrodominance, or the turn 2 Show and Tell. If you do not have them, or your hand doesn't have like a high chance of drawing into them, then you should be mulliganing. Even if Like, you can mulligan all the way down to 3 if you have to. But yeah, it's very, very important. Um, turn 1 Necro, you can honestly draw, like, you can Necro yourself basically as low as is safe to do. Specifically against like another combo deck where you want to go fast, you could go down to 2. Um, because you're very likely to find the combo pieces that you need um, to win on turn 2 with that many cards, which is basically you need some kind of fast mana. So you're going to need to find like Dark Ritual or Grief plus Sacrifice, and then you just need a Sacrifice and a Shadow of Mortality to start, and it's exactly what I said before. You're not usually going to be going to 2 on turn 2. It's generally safer to go to something like 8 to 10, but it's 100% an option and is definitely the ideal play against something like Show and Tell where you're trying to win as fast as possible. Speaking of, really quick, I actually want to go back and mention that Show and Tell might look scary to play in this deck, but it's not actually at all, unless you're going against a deck with Omniscience that has Born and can win at instant speed. So like any of the Omnitel variants, the control variant, or the stock Sultai version. The only one that you're safe against is Shift and Tell, but basically the reason that you're safe against every other deck to play the Show and Tell line is that when you activate Grizzlebrand, it's at instant speed, and then when you sacrifice Grizzlebrand, the sacrificing the creature is an additional cost to the spell, so there's no opportunity for your opponent to like Swords to Plowshares your Grizzlebrand, or if they put in like a Static Prison, for example, off of your Show and Tell, it's not going to resolve. Like, you're going to be able to draw these cards and then sacrifice the Grizzlebrand before anything happens with it. So you don't have to worry about playing Show and Tell out unless you're against specifically other Show and Tell decks that have Omniscience and Born. Okay, so Necrodominance works functionally the same as Necropotence in this deck, except the hand size does matter, and also the fact that you have to wait until your end step to activate it does matter, because so like with Necropotence, you can lower your life in the middle of your turn to make Shadow cheaper. If you have all the combo pieces right, you can just say like, okay, I'm going to go off right now, and I'm going to lower myself down to 7 with Necropotence and then combo. With Necrodominance, you can only lower your life at the end of your turn, so you have to be a little bit more careful if you get Necrodominance down. And then the hand size is quite important because it's in order to have a hand where you can evoke a Grief to protect the rest of your combo with only a 5-card hand, you need it basically can only happen on turn 3, and so it's very difficult. And so that's also something to be aware of. So if you're against specifically like a control deck with counter spells, it's Necrodominance becomes quite a bit worse because not being able to like keep that Grief in your hand to look at their hand and stop and prevent them from interacting with your combo is really, really important. Yeah, so that's everything in the main deck. Spell Pierce is just a pretty versatile card for dealing with things like Thoughtseize and opponent's counterspells. And then in the sideboard, we have Leyline of 4 times Leyline of Sanctity. It's pretty self-explanatory. We do not want to get Thoughtseize or Grief ourselves. We have 2 Pact of Negation, specifically for matchups into control decks, because we just want to be able to protect our combo the turn that we're going to try to win. And then we also have Defense Grids for that same type of matchup. Duress is there for Show and Tell matchups. And then Feed the Swarm is there to deal with Rule of Law effects like Deafening Silence and like Archon of Emeria, because we can't combo through those ever. In a situation where an opponent sticks them and we can't remove them, we have to resort to try to beating them down with Shadows and Griefs and potentially Grizzlebrands, which is totally doable, but definitely need a spell here to interact with that stuff. The sideboard, I'm feeling pretty good about this iteration, but it's still being tuned, and I still have a few things that I want to test in the main deck, specifically with the Spell Pierce slot. So I would say right now this deck is a little bit more suited for best of one, but I think it's extremely good in best of one. You just have to keep in mind, like, this deck will have a lot of games, not a lot, because you have actually a very good chance of hitting one of these, like turn one Necro, either turn one Necro or the turn two Show and Tell. You have like a good chance of hitting those lines if you're mulliganing aggressively. Um, but obviously, like, if you don't find them, then the deck becomes much, much worse. But if you do find them, you're very likely to win turn two or turn three. So yeah, you just have to realize there are going to be some games that you just lose because you're not finding the right cards in your opening hand. But there are also going to be games where your opponent takes one turn and plays a Surveil land, and then they lose. And that will more than make up for them. Yes, like I said, super unique deck. I've never played anything like this before. It's super, super, super cool to generate 40 mana and Torment of Hailfire your opponent for X equals 40, and there's just nothing they can do about it. It's amazing. So if you try it out, I hope you enjoy.